Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Wordy Pair Podcast. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I'm Justin.
You're the 8th daughter of a 8th son?
Am I?
Maybe?
This is news to me.
Well, I mean, that's how it goes. You should have 23andMe'd yourself, a long time ago. So
Yeah, well, hang on, I gotta go change uniforms if that's the case. I'll be right back. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe not. We'll present that mental image later.
No, we won't. Rest assured,
Oh,
viewers.
yeah, nope, now it's on. No, you know what? You might win this one. You edit all of this.
I do edit all of this.
But I'll try to make it so funny that you won't be able to resist.
I'll be able to resist, don't worry. So, this week we are talking about a Terry Pratchett book. And this book is, what did you say? It was the third?
I believe it's the third Terry Pratchett Discworld book.
Third Terry Pratchett Discworld book. This one is called Equal Rites, and I have it here, but what's the copyright? 1987.
Yeah, so if I'm correct and it's the third one, then that would have been, I believe, The Light Fantastic was the first, and then The Color of Magic.
Yeah.
Or no, The Color of Magic, Light Fantastic, and then Equal Rites.
Okay.
Equal Rites, of course, presenting the single greatest character in all of literary history, although I had forgotten how watered down she was in this book compared to the books that followed, but obviously
I was almost thinking that
she
she was like a different character.
Kind of. There were some things that happened in it where it's like, oh, that's not really how she ended up.
Well,
but that was true of a lot of the Discworld
They keep calling her
characters.
Granny Weatherwax, but then it takes them half the book to actually say that her first name is Esmeralda, and so for the first half of the book, I was like, oh, is this the future Granny Weatherwax's grandmother or something?
Oh, you actually thought that?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
It was rolling
Well, no,
around
that is
in the
not the
back there.
case.
I was like, well, maybe this character is so different from Granny Weatherwax that I know that it's got to be like her mother or her aunt or something.
She doesn't quite do as much in this book as she does in the other book. She's not really the secondary character, though. Her and Escarina are both kind of top billing as lead characters in this book.
Yeah.
But the perspective kind of jumps around to a bunch of different places.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of characters towards the end that are getting attention once they get to the Unseen University.
Right, which takes a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah, I mean, it's a relatively short book compared
Yeah.
to a lot of the other Discworld books.
A little over 200 pages in the version that I have, yeah.
Yeah, and I've only read it twice before, I think. And it's been a long time since I read it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and read it, and it was a lot more, being his third book, it was much more, much thinner than a lot of the later books in terms of the content that was in it. There wasn't really that much going on.
Yeah. But
But it did have a lot of the elements that made, especially those earlier books, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
So I guess if we want to get the big one out of the way,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the earlier Terry Pratchett books had this huge nod to H.P. Lovecraft and cosmic horror,
Mm-hmm.
where he had this concept that didn't really get brought up a lot in the later half, maybe even more of his books.
It kind of morphed. Morphed is the wrong word, because in the world it didn't morph, but I mean, like, in a literary sense, it seems like it morphed. Because I keep seeing the auditors in the later books, and they remind me of quote-unquote them in this book, but, obviously they're very different entities, but they serve a similar purpose.
Yeah, they're not really creatures from the dungeon dimensions, as it's called.
Yeah.
Which this is the little
which
side
also doesn't get
reality.
mentioned until very late in the book, and so you're like, oh, what? Is this a thing? And then it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, the dungeon dimensions were brought up in either The Color of Magic or Light Fantastic. They actually had a scene in, I believe, The Color of Magic where they take a side trip to the cave of Bel-Shamaroth, which is... the way that story read, it kind of seemed like Bel-Shamaroth was almost some kind of Shoggoth or something.
Well, no, because he always plays around with the different elements and flops them around. But like it's a fun sounding name on a Lovecraftian creature, right?
Right. And a lot of the ways that the magic worked in the books was changed over time too. Because in this book, I'd totally forgotten that one of the reasons that Granny Weatherwax tells Escarina that witches don't really use magic too much is because they know about the creatures from the dungeon dimensions, and they know that they're attracted to magic. So,
but they don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Apparently, they don't tell anyone.
I mean, you can see how that's kind of a double-edged sword, because obviously, if you popularize this information, there are people that are going to be like, "Ooh, cool! Horrible monstrosities from outside dimensions." But then, at least at the same time, there'd be people who are like, "Right, we need to make sure that these horrible things from outside dimensions actually never make it in here." So, it's a mixed blessing.
And it seemed like it was way too easy in this book for them to do that, because it was just like one smart guy that...
Yeah. And it's not even entirely clear what he did, because it happens off screen, so to speak.
Yeah. But, this is a common thing in those earlier books. Like there were a couple of books where they touched on this. There was Moving Pictures, was all about the invention of movies on the Discworld, and this was... this was taking place in some sort of magical way in which the creatures from the dungeon dimensions were possibly going to find a way into this dimension. Mm-hmm. They had them in...
It's worth noting that the dedication for this book actually mentions H.P. Lovecraft specifically.
Yeah, there's that too.
So, clearly there's something else going on here.
Well, when I read this book, I didn't actually know who H.P. Lovecraft was. Mm-hmm. I think, what was it, like maybe 10 or 12 years ago was when I first read Lovecraft.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this before, but...
Yeah, that you basically sat down and binge read everything there was.
Well, no, like before that, I assumed that H.P. Lovecraft was a modern writer, an alive writer,
you mentioned
contemporary to now.
But yes. But then you said that once you actually sat down and learned about him, that you basically speed ran his.
Oh yeah, I read everything. It was great. It was just like a couple of days of just, this is all I'm going to do for the next couple of days, and it worked out nicely.
Yeah, except for the nightmares.
Oh no, those are the best part.
I mean,
dude. A good fever dream nightmare can't be beaten.
I suppose so.
It's like when you wake up in the morning and you're like, people were opening doors on their chests and molten lava was flowing out. It's been a good night.
I guess that's a kind of good night.
Yeah, I thought so.
Well, that says more about you than anything else.
A lot of things say a lot of things about me.
But we prefer not to listen to them.
Yeah. They're like the creatures from the dungeon dimensions.
Yeah. All over the place.
So yeah, this book is called Equal Rites. Rites spelled R-I-T-E-S, because we're making a pun on magic. Yep. So there's that. And Escarina is this girl that is born at the beginning of the book. A wizard comes to town, and he's aware, because I guess magic tells wizards these things.
Well, this is something that's mentioned in several of the books, that wizards know when their time to go is.
Which is funny, because that's another thing that kind of got dropped in the later books. In the early books, wizards and witches always knew the time of their death. Mm-hmm. And they kind of got away from that. Terry Pratchett got away from that in later books.
Oh, really?
Well, he didn't really mention it. Like, after a certain point, it was never brought up again. And, there were times where wizards would just die, and it's like, why? Wait, shouldn't they have known they were going to die?
Usually they would have, unless there was some kind of extenuating circumstance that made it so they couldn't. I mean,
Well, there's
I'm thinking
there's
of
one.
I'm thinking of what's it called? Reaper Man, right? Reaper Man, Wendell Poons knows that he's about to die.
Yeah.
Reaper Man is what? There's a list here actually of the books. Let's see if I can find out. Reaper Man's number 11. So
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he made it a thing reasonably far forward in the series, but yeah, it sounds like he may have forgotten about it later on, or just decided that it wasn't relevant to the plot or something like that.
I mean, it was relevant to a lot of the earlier books, like in Witches Abroad. The beginning of the book is this witch that's actually someone's fairy godmother, and
Okay.
she's going to pass her wand off onto Magrat or Magrat, however you want to pronounce it. And
McGraw.
it's kind of like a running joke in some of the stories where, because she knows that she's going to die, she has everything prepared, and there's all these letters to be given to people, and she's got her grave ready, and that's probably the funniest one that he did, where with a prepared death, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it did sort of disappear in the later books completely. Like, I don't remember it taking place in anything past, like, I don't even think there was a mention of it in any of the Guards books.
Well, I mean, are there wizards and or witches dying in those books?
I'm pretty sure there were a couple in some of the Guards books. Like, there had to have been a wizard that died in one. Wizards were, there was always a wizard dying somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But never Rincewind. Rincewind never dies.
No, that would be. He's not supposed to.
Right. That's the joke. Yeah, but anyway, you get this wizard who knows he's about to die, and he also knows that an eighth son of an eighth son is about to be born. And formerly, in these books, an eighth son of an eighth son... Now,
it's not clear why he knows that.
Yeah, that's the part that doesn't really get explained. But he does kind of offhand say, well, this is just a thing that wizards tend to know. Mm-hmm. So he goes and he visits this town, and when the time comes for this eighth son to be born, Granny Weatherwax is the one that's playing midwife here.
Midwifing, yeah.
This is the introduction to her as a character in Terry Pratchett. So this wizard shows up, and he's like, yeah, there's going to be an eighth son of an eighth son, and I'm about to die, and I'm basically going to pass some of my knowledge and power along and give this child the staff to protect it and help lead the way to make it a wizard. And he does so against Granny Weatherwax's attempts to stop him, and so it all kind of happens really fast, and then the wizard dies. Yeah. And then Granny Weatherwax is like, yeah, there's just one small problem. This isn't a boy.
Right.
So that's kind of where the name of the book comes from. You have this situation where there's no such thing as a female wizard, and yet now there is an eighth daughter of an eighth son, which is a joke in itself because it's really only the first daughter of an eighth son, but it's the eighth child. So this sort of sets in motion this chain of events where it's like, oh, well, is this girl going to have to become a wizard? And the beginning of the book, they kind of have Granny Weatherwax wondering if that's even a good idea, because she knows that there's no such thing as a female wizard, so she decides that at some point when she starts displaying magic, she's going to take this girl under her wing and teach her to be a witch.
Right. And hopefully that'll solve the problem. The end.
Yep.
It's a really short book.
Does it solve the problem, though?
No, it does not. That's kind of what... I mean, there's a bunch of interesting stuff going on at the beginning that are really good setups. Like, for instance, the wizard's staff doesn't, like... It isn't just like a staff. It's actually magical, and it, like, takes up a position inside the smith's house after the little girl grabs it, and it's like immobilized there. It's not going to move. And then it itself has a lot of effects later on in the story because it kind of has a mind of its own.
Yeah, which doesn't get explained particularly clearly.
No.
But the staff itself kind of protects the girl, whose name is Escarina, usually referred to as Esk by some people.
Yeah.
So the staff is like very protective of her, and it's one of the few times in these books where Granny Weatherwax is cautious around another character. Mm-hmm. In theory, only in theory, but in theory, as the books went on and Granny Weatherwax's character got fleshed out more and more, she may be the absolute most powerful magic user on the entirety of the Discworld.
Mm-hmm.
Just based on the things that she was able to do that nobody else was able to do, it seems to be that that's the case if you really look at all the things that she was able to accomplish. However, obviously, even being that powerful, she wouldn't be better than everyone, and she wouldn't be perfect. And so this early book was the one where there were the most scenes where Granny Weatherwax came up against things that were difficult to handle. Like at first,
Sure.
she tries to pick up the staff, and it knocks her across the room.
Yeah.
And she does manage to pick it up, and she's actually going to burn it. This is one of her plans to get the wizard magic away from Escarina.
Right.
She's going to try and burn the staff, and she sticks it in the fire, but it apparently has some kind of link to Escarina, where she hears Escarina screaming in the other room when she does it.
Yeah.
And so now her and the staff are at odds throughout the whole book. It's just like, all right, fine, I see how it is. You play ball and I'll play ball, but we are not friends.
It plays bat and she plays ball.
Yeah. And, Granny Weatherwax is not one to take losing lightly. In fact, that's the running joke of every book after this that has her.
Yeah.
So, by the end of the book, there is this wonderful scene where her and the staff kind of have it out, and I forget exactly how it was worded, but you know what? Maybe we should dig this one up. It's always worth a check.
Yeah, sure. Let's get the real quote.
It's we may have to edit some of this out.
That's what I do, yes.
Yeah, here it is. Okay. So they're trying to get this staff, and it's emitting magic, really cold, and there's really no way to get to it.
Yeah.
And it says, Granny adjusted her hat and straightened up purposefully. Right, she said. Now she's with this wizard named Cutangle. Cutangle swayed, the tone of voice cut through him like a diamond saw. He could dimly remember being scolded by his mother when he was small. Well, this was that voice, only refined and concentrated and edged with little bits of carborundum, a tone of command that would have a corpse standing to attention, and could probably have marched it halfway across the cemetery before it remembered it was dead. So yeah, she takes issue with the staff at one point. It says, you know what, that's it, we're settling this.
Yeah.
But in the end, her and the staff end up kind of working together to get problems solved. It's all good.
Yeah.
Game recognizes game, I guess. Yeah, this is proto Granny Weatherwax. She's presented as a witch and a midwife. They kind of flesh out some of the witch stuff that takes place later in the books, where witches are all about this thing called headology. In the books after this, they kind of made it more like that was Granny Weatherwax's thing, and not so much every witch's thing.
Okay.
The strangeness of the way Granny expressed things in equal rights, not all of it carried over to the way that things happen. Like for instance, with the dungeon dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this particular book, Granny says that they learn about all these herbs and all these different ways that you can solve problems without using the magic, even though you know how to use magic. Because you don't want to attract the things from the dungeon dimensions.
Well, she's not clear about that, but it is like there's a very long training montage where Escarina is learning which quote-unquote magic, but all of it is akin to, just like knowing what herbs are good, having a good sense of, how a person will react to being told something, stuff like that. It's very practical. And, finally, Escarina is like, are we ever going to do any real magic? And reluctantly, Granny Weatherwax is like, okay, here's something we can try.
Oh yeah, they do the borrowing. So Granny
Yeah.
Weatherwax's thing is that she can ride the minds of creatures and kind of nudge them to, go the way she wants to. So she can fly around as an owl or a bat, or, hitch a ride in the mind of a wolf. And she expressly stated that this is not a wizard thing. Because if men tried to do it, they would try too hard to control the creature rather than just go along for the ride.
In fact, she has to talk to Escarina about it and say, hey, your goal is not to try to control this. Your goal is to kind of like give it a little feather touch and say, oh, maybe you would rather go that way, kind of thing. And there's also cases where Escarina pulls off some wizard magic and shows how much more difficult it is to control than witch magic is, right? They're sitting in Granny Weatherwax's like living room, and Escarina is like, well, why can't we just start the fire with magic? And Granny's like, well, that's why we have matches. And Escarina's like, well, I feel like I know how to just start the fire with magic. And Granny's like, okay, well, try it. And Escarina basically does something, and this massive green fireball flies out of her hand and melts the base of the chimney. Basically, there's a significant difference between these two types of magic, and it is one of the major elements of the story that control is more, or control and calculation are more an element of one and not the other. But at the same time, there is a certain amount of calculation and control in the witch magic as well. It's actually kind of a neat dynamic. I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that particular dynamic does stick around for most of what I remember reading. Like, I think that remains the dynamic, but it's never really brought up as this is wizard magic and this is witch's magic anymore.
Sure.
It was just this book, and it was obviously for the purpose of telling a story about how a girl was going to become a wizard, even though a girl had never been a wizard before. And the borrowing thing is actually what sets that off.
Yeah.
So up to this point, Granny is like, all right, we're pretty safe here. Escarina has this tendency to do wizard magic and things, but it seems like things are working out. So finally, she's going to teach her how to do this borrowing thing. And when they finally do it, she teaches Escarina to borrow the mind of an eagle.
Yeah.
And Escarina gets too into it and is like, oh no, I can actually do what I like here with this. And she does, in fact, try to take control of the eagle, and she takes off.
Yeah.
And so a couple of days actually go by where Granny's like worried about whether she's going to be able to come back or not, and she's trying to find her, and then eventually she has to go and find the staff and have the staff help her find Escarina.
Right.
Now this, of course, after all this happens and after Escarina's rescued and she realizes, oh yeah, you can't do that because you start to lose who you are and think you're the eagle at some point, and so you can't just be riding around as an eagle and trying to take control of it.
It's even a little bit more nuanced than that, because I really like the way that he set this up. Because what Weatherwax says is that things have a shape, and if you put your mind into a thing that has a different shape, it has an effect on your mind as well. Because it's not just that she forgets who she is once she's in the eagle, it's also that she remembers who she is once she's back in her own body. There's an element of convenience there, because it'd be a little bit irritating if the next 60 pages were about Granny Weatherwax rehabilitating Escarina's mind while she's in her human body. That would be a much less fun story. But it also is kind of it's one of those things that feels deep and nuanced and interesting at the same time. So it's a fun mechanic to play with.
Yeah, and the fact that Escarina went a little overboard with this is what prompts Granny to finally say, okay, she's meant to be a wizard. We have to take her to Ankh-Morpork and stick her in Unseen University.
Well, she doesn't know that Ankh-Morpork is the place for Unseen University at first, right? They're like, right. we need to go to Unseen University, and they basically just go to the biggest nearby city that they can find, and there they learn more information. Other stuff happens, yeah.
It's really funny how that happens, where Granny's just like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, we have to get you to Unseen University, but she has no concept of how big the world is or what geography is. Right. And so she's just like, I mean, the next city over is big. Maybe it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have to go to another city, and they find another witch that Granny knows there, and she's like, yeah. How do we get her to wherever she needs to go? And she's like, oh, well, Unseen University is not here. It's in Ankh-Morpork.
And it's 500 miles away.
Yeah.
And Granny Weatherwax is like, oh, that's a long way.
And it's interesting, too, because a lot of the book here, Granny and Escarina get separated at this point. And so Escarina makes the rest of the journey basically on her own.
Yeah.
And Granny is just sort of in pursuit trying to find her.
Yeah.
You don't get to see much of what Granny's doing at this point, but essentially Escarina slips off with a bunch of people on a boat. a couple of boats.
Well,
A flotilla.
it's earlier than that. She gets lost and she goes to an inn. And,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
and she shows up at the inn. Like it's like not it's barely even an inn. I would call it more like a tavern. And she's like, "Can I have a glass of milk?" And like the owner doesn't even see her because she's so short that she can't be seen. That all he sees is this staff, kind of clomping around, and she's so short that he has to like lean over his bar to look down at her. And she's like, "Can I have some milk?" He's like, "I don't have any milk. I have beer." And she's like, "I'm pretty sure you have milk." And he's like, and he gets this feeling, and he's like, "Oh no, someone with a staff is telling me that they think I really do have milk. I better go." And he goes over to one of his barrels and he turns the tap, and yeah, milk comes out of it. And he's like, "Okay, here's some milk. But not a whole lot of market for milk in my business. I mean, can you turn it back into beer?" And of course, Escarina doesn't really know what beer is, so she's like, I don't know enough about beer to do that. She's thinking to herself, but she's like, "Oh, but the thing that people drink beer for is because it has." She doesn't have the words, but she's like, "Oh yeah, it's because it kind of has alcohol, basically." And she's like, "Well, I can remember one thing that has alcohol," and she remembers her hometown's famous old
Applejack.
peach brandy. And
yeah, so they called it Applejack.
No. There's Applejack's a different thing, but there's peach brandy too. Because the Applejack is made by Freeze Distilling, and the peach brandy is made by Triple Distilling. So,
well, no, I mean in the book, didn't they refer to it as Applejack?
They talk about Applejack earlier in the book, but the peach brandy is a different thing entirely.
Oh, okay.
So basically, she takes these 10 barrels of what was beer, is now milk, and turns it into peach brandy, and he's like, "Well, peach brandy's worth a lot," and his wife is like, his wife basically treats her like a golden goose, and is like, "You should stay here," and it does not go well.
Yeah, no, this was at a time when there was a lot more skullduggery taking places in these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Pratchett used to have a lot more of a darker tone to things happening in his lighthearted and funny stories. Like Ankh-Morpork, I mentioned before, was a much more violent and dangerous place than it ended up being after a lot of the guards books changed. But
sure,
even the lesser towns in this book, like I don't remember what the name of the town was that they went to, but
no, I don't either.
It wasn't an important Discworld town other than in this book.
Right.
They had these innkeepers that were basically going to try and steal Escarina's staff because they thought that they'd be able to use it, which they would not have been able to do.
No,
but they don't know that because they don't
know
understand how magic works.
Yeah,
and they probably assume that she can't possibly be a real wizard, and so they're
or even a witch at that age. It's just like something funky's going on. It's clearly, it's almost certainly has something to do with the staff, because the staff is actually described as something that is very, like, obviously magical on its own. It has these carvings on it that aren't actually carved into it, but kind of like hover a couple of millimeters off the surface, basically.
Yeah.
It's very clearly its own magic.
Yeah, so that's a nice little side event that takes place, and so Escarina runs away from them, and she ends up hiding on a boat, which was it was a nice little description that Pratchett gave of how, as anyone who decides to fall asleep on a boat, naturally you're going to wake up to being somewhere much further away than where you started.
Yeah.
Which is what happens to Escarina. And she ends up waking up on a boat that is a whole bunch of boats that are just on their way down the river that are being piloted by the people called the Zune, which is one of the few things in this book that I never really forgot, because it was one of my favorite Terry Pratchett moments in a book, when he starts describing the Zune and what they are. So I managed to find the page here with a quick flip through.
Yeah.
And it says, his name was Amshat Balzun. He lived on the raft with his 3 wives and 3 children. He was a liar. What always annoyed the enemies of the Zune tribe was not simply their honesty, which was infuriatingly absolute, but their total directness of approach. The Zunes had never heard about a euphemism and wouldn't understand what to do with it if they had one, except that they would certainly have called it a nice way of saying something nasty. So this the purpose of the liar in the Zune is that the Zune have one person who is taught to lie at a young age, and he is the person that deals with all of the other people in the world outside of the Zune tribe.
Right.
And they're proud of the fact that he's a liar. And this makes everyone else angry because everyone else calls themselves politicians or diplomats, and they feel like the Zune are ruining it for everyone by calling themselves liars.
Yeah. I love this line. The first recorded Zune proto-lie was, actually my grandfather is quite tall. But eventually they got the hang of it, and the Office of Tribal Liar was instituted.
Yeah, it's a fantastic little piece of Discworld lore, which I don't think
it's
ever...
fun because it shows, because it's not just that he's like a liar, like it's just that he can understand and deal with lies. Like the whole point, the way that Pratchett describes the Zunes is he says that if you were to lie to them, they would see it as if you were manipulating reality in front of their eyes. Like it's a very weird mindset, but it's not just like, oh yeah, we need someone who can lie. It's that the liar can tell the truth, but he also can recognize when others are lying. And so it's important for things like dealing with merchants and stuff like that, where the merchant might haggle and say, oh, if I cut the price any lower, my children will starve. And, every Zune would say, oh, well, we don't want your children to starve. But a liar can say, oh, you're trying to haggle with me, I'm going to continue to haggle back with you, right? That's the point. It's not just that he's some kind of pathological liar. It's that he has this ability to deal with not even necessarily lies, but just hyperbole that the Zunes don't have, right? So
right.
They're a real fun little group. There's this great scene where where basically the merchant's like, I'll give you all of these, what were they, aquamarines? Some kind of jewel. I'll give you all these jewels for 100 of your sheepskins or whatever they are. And he's like, oh, these look like good jewels. And little Escarina is there, and she's like behind his, she's like hiding behind him, but she's like looking out, and she makes a funny face, and she like basically says, these aren't what he's telling you they are. And so there's a real fun scene around that where, she actually prevents the Zune's specialist guy from being cheated by a merchant, and there's some funny stuff that goes on with that as well. I thought that was a really fun scene.
Yeah, that was the looks that the Zune liar shoots the other merchant at the end of it are kind of what make that, because he's like, I know what you're about now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so anyway, Escarina ends up, after the Zune, she ends up traveling with a group of people that are in wagons, I believe.
Yeah.
And this is a much shorter part of the story. You don't get too familiar with a lot of the characters, but essentially she tries to join them, and they're like, no, we can't take... The guy that's leading it is like, no, we can't take more people. And so she's like, well, whatever, I gotta go to Ankh-Morpork one way or another, so I'm gonna start heading there. And he watches her go off, and he's just thinking about all the bad things that could happen to someone. He's like, crap. So he goes and grabs her, says, no, you can travel with us. Which ended up being lucky for them.
Yeah.
Because at some point they were attacked by goblins, and it was in the middle of the night.
Technically.
Gnolls, yeah. It was in the middle of the night, and they wake up to explosions. Nobody has any idea what happened. All they know is that there's a lot of Gnoll bits just sort of, exploded everywhere, and there's a big, like, fireball area that was blown away, and they're just like, oh, okay.
Well, one of their guards is dead too, but yeah.
Yeah. And they're traveling with a wizard, but the wizard's like, yeah, that wasn't me.
Well, no, that was not me.
This is actually where you meet one of the other semi-main characters in the story. You get...
Yeah.
I forget what the wizard's name was. It was...
Treacle?
Treacle, yeah. Treacle
like
and Simon. So Treacle has found... It was Treacle.
Treatle. No, Treatle, yeah.
Treatle? Was it Treatle?
With 2 T's, yeah.
Okay, so it was Treatle. So you have Treatle and Simon. Treatle has discovered this prodigy, I guess, among wizards called Simon. Yeah. So this is one of the interesting things about this book. Like the book is called Equal Rites, but you have to look at it in the lens of 1987, not the lens of 2025, because if a book came out today called Equal Rites, it would be an abomination of writing, no doubt.
I was worried about it when you picked this particular book, actually.
I mean, it was a Pratchett book. You shouldn't have been.
I mean, you never know.
So the equal rights that they're talking about in this book is quite literally, she is a wizard, so she should go to wizard school, and there shouldn't be a problem with that. That's basically the gist of the book.
Yeah,
and this isn't one of those books where, I mean, despite the fact that Granny Weatherwax is in it, and Granny Weatherwax is like, she's one of those characters that is way overpowered for any situation, and so they have to up the ante against her for any of the books that she's in.
Well, so there's one situation in this book that she's not overpowered for.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few in this book compared to a lot of the other books.
But like the one I'm thinking of is actually another one of my favorite scenes, is that Granny Weatherwax, despite the fact that she is a witch, does not like flying brooms. And so she doesn't know how to repair a flying broom. She has to go find some dwarves to repair her flying broom. And there's this great scene where like it's basically like a shade tree car mechanic kind of thing going on.
Yeah. If you can find that line. The line that she says was really good.
The dwarf sat down slowly and deliberately. As for repair, he said, well, I don't know about repair. Rebuild, maybe. Of course, it's hard to get the bristles these days, even if you can find people to do the proper binding, and the spells need... I don't want it rebuilt. I just want it to work properly, said Granny. It's an early model, you see, the dwarf plugged on. Very tricky, those early models. You can't get the wood. He was picked up bodily until his eyes were level with Granny. Dwarves, being magical in themselves as it were, are quite resistant to magic, but her expression looked as though she was trying to weld his eyeballs to the back of his skull. Just repair it, she hissed. Please? What, make a botch job, said the dwarf, his pipe clattering to the floor. Yes. Patch it up, you mean? Betray my training by doing half a job? Yes, said Granny. Her pupils were two little black holes. Oh, said the dwarf. Right then.
Yeah, you don't mess with Granny Weatherwax.
Yeah.
So I don't actually remember what I was talking about before we diverged this time.
You were talking about how Granny Weatherwax wasn't fully prepared for some of the things in the story.
There was that. No, we were talking about Treadle and Simon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Escarina meets Treadle and Simon, and so she's talking with them about Unseen University, and she broaches the subject of if there's ever been a female wizard before. And this kind of gets laughed down by Treadle pretty quickly. He brushes it off as being a ridiculous idea. Well, he's an interesting
character in this sense, because he does laugh down the idea, but at the same time, later on, he's actually very helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, he's sort of helpful. I mean, part of him being helpful in the when they actually get to Ankh-Morpork, they meet up. She meets Treadle again, and he decides to bring her inside. And it seems like part of what he's doing is not just playing along with her, but it's also he kind of wants to see how the other wizards are going to react to this.
Yeah,
and so he's putting her in a situation where she ends up being a little humiliated in front of everyone, and it doesn't sit well.
Yeah, but he gave her the opening, which is, I think, more than I would have expected that a character in that position to do, right? Because earlier on he's like, oh, blah, ha, 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 yeah, female wizard, ha, ha, ha. But then when she's actually at the gates and the gates won't open for her, and he, his caravan shows up right behind her, she's like, will you let me in? And he's like, sure, I'll let you in.
Yeah. And it's actually, this particular part of the book is one of the parts that doesn't have a good enough explanation, in my opinion. Because throughout the whole book, anytime she really needed to use magic in some way or another, Esk was able to. But when she's in front of all the wizards and she's trying to prove that she can do wizard magic, for some reason it just doesn't work. And there's no real explanation for it in the book. So she gets embarrassed and she runs away and meets up with Granny again. And Granny is just like...
More importantly than that, she throws the staff away at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a big deal.
That's a really big deal. But Granny has a plan once she meets up with her, and she says, that you gotta find the witch's way into the university. You don't go in like a wizard. You gotta go in like a witch. And Eska's like, well, there's no other way. And Granny's like, no, there's a way in. Trust me. I'm
always a way.
I'm Granny Weatherwax. I know things. Trust me.
Yeah.
So Granny goes in through a series of.
It's actually very funny the way that Pratchett writes it, because he's like, Yeah, the main gate is made of this special metal that can only be moved or manipulated with magic, and it requires you to use wizard magic to open the gate. But also there's a wooden door in the back that you can just go in. I don't know. The way that...
Fantastic.
I'm not doing it justice, but you really should sit down and read the way that Pratchett did it rather than having us read it to you, because the way that he does it, he just has this way with words, and it just is phenomenally funny.
Yeah, he always does manage to present things in this way that fit with the overall theme of what is happening with magic in the story. So there's a lot of talk of headology, which is Granny Weatherwax's sort of way of saying psychology.
Yeah.
She refers to it as headology when she gets people to do the things that she wants them to do or that they want. So one of the jokes in, I believe, in Weird Sisters, the book that came after this with Granny.
Yeah.
She talks about how you don't have to create a magic potion. You give someone a mixture of sugar and water and tell them it's a potion, and 9 times out of 10, this will solve their problem.
Yeah.
And she calls that headology.
I think she does that in this book too.
I don't think she actually says it about that, but she does bring up that the potions aren't necessarily real potions and you're not doing real magic, because Escarina asks her about that as they're doing all these things. They also make a lot of jokes about how the witches have all of these cures and medicines for things of a more virility kind of nature. And Escarina doesn't exactly understand what a lot of them are for, even though she knows how to make them.
Well, like, it's funny because even Granny Weatherwax is a little bit astounded at Escarina's thickness in this area. Where she's like, I mean, I've had her take the goats over to so and so where he has a billy goat, and she's delivered baby goats before, and yet she just doesn't seem to actually make the connection.
Yeah, and in some cases in these stories, it's someone just playing along, pretending they're not making the connection, but Escarina legitimately does not make that connection because she says something to Simon later in the story that gives Simon a hint that she doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
And, of course, that brings us to Simon. Now, Simon is the prodigy that Treadle has found, and he's got these crazy theories which ultimately are like quantum physics of magic.
Yeah.
Almost verbatim. And...
well, it uses a lot of the jargon, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of physics jargon thrown in with some magic, but he's got these theories that kind of leave Treadle floored, and he's telling all these other wizards about them off screen, about not the wizards. He's telling them about Simon.
Yeah.
And when he gets there, they're all ready to hear some of the stuff he has to say and see some of the magic he can do. And he shows them this spell that really impresses a lot of them, which is weird because to me it seemed like the exact same spell that they used in the Light Fantastic when one of the magic books opened, but whatever, he impresses them. Yeah. And it's obvious that they're going to try and make him a top wizard, and they almost immediately have him like giving lectures and things later on in the story.
Yeah.
In secret. And Escarina ends up being able to get into the university and attend classes because Granny Weatherwax has shown her the way. And the way is laundry. So she is
cleaning and laundry. She gets
Escarina to go work as a cleaner and one of the laundry girls running in the background of Unseen University. And Granny Weatherwax, of course, Escarina's not happy about this, but Granny Weatherwax is like, you can actually go anywhere you want and attend any of the classes and learn anything that you want to learn. Being able to move around freely like this is the witch's way of doing things. This is how you should do it.
Yeah.
And, for a while, this kind of sits okay with Escarina, but she wants to get into the library. She figures that if she can get into the library, she can find a book that can teach her to read. This is the logic she's running with.
Yeah.
And she ends up meeting with Simon at this point in the story again and discussing all of this. Now, not too much has time to happen from here out because we're pretty close to the end of the book at this point.
Yeah.
But they have a discussion about, what it means to use magic and how to read. And it's not too much that's really taking place other than having them in the library for a scene in which Escarina, several times now, but in this particular moment, she notices the creatures from the dungeon dimension are kind of watching and gathering around Simon.
Yeah.
And he's completely oblivious to them. And with all the magic in the library, because in Terry Pratchett's world, libraries have a lot of power. And if there's magical books in a library, all gathered together, the power is immense.
Well, there's even a little joke about having too many books with enough magic power close to each other causes like a critical mass, just like like a nuclear reaction. So yeah, it's mostly magic books that are the problem, not so much regular books, but yeah.
Yeah, he kind of has an alternate theory about libraries in some of the books. I think in The Color of Magic, or maybe Light Fantastic, he mentions L space, which is library space, is this sort of bending of time and space that librarians can use to go to any library in the universe at any time.
Oh, I vaguely remember that, yeah.
There's a scene in Small Gods where, the librarian from Unseen University is not in that book anywhere except this one place as a cameo where the Library of Ephebe, the Great Library of Ephebe, which is supposed to be equivalent to the Library of Alexandria or whatever, it's burning down. And so there's this little scene where an orangutan appears in the middle of the library. He kind of just sort of saunters in from behind a wall and starts gathering a bunch of books and then, takes off. And just a brief paragraph saying, it's interesting to note that many years later, there were many of the books thought lost in the fire of Ephebe were discovered in the Unseen University Library. So,
yeah.
So the L-Space thing was for a little while a pretty nice running gag, but that again was another thing that kind of vanished later on. It wasn't used that much, but when it was good.
Sure.
So they have a bit of a thing that happens where the creatures from the dungeon dimension kind of cause an accident in the library.
Yeah.
That, oh geez, doesn't Simon get knocked out or something and he won't wake up?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they talk about it as if them knocking him out has made it so that it's likely that he will be taken over if he does wake back up again by something else. It's one of those things where, you are knocked out in exactly the wrong place because your brain is going to get invaded by the worst things in the universe.
Yeah, and he's an easy target because his head is just so full of magic and all these formulas that the creatures from the dungeon dimension understand it better than he does because they're like, this is our way in. So they want to use him to break into reality.
Right.
And Granny Weatherwax does more in a couple of sentences to flesh out what the dungeon dimension creatures are than any of the other books.
Mm-hmm.
Because she says they're jealous of reality. They want to exist as something in reality, and they don't quite understand how it works, which is why so many of them look like creatures that are different creatures with all their parts stuck together.
Yeah, yeah.
And she says, but it would be like a goldfish trying to survive in a fire or something like that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to handle reality, is what she says.
Yeah.
This is the climax of the story, essentially, because Escarina goes to get the other wizards, and of course there's always a big storm. A big storm starts happening, and Granny Weatherwax realizes that there's things going on, and she's going to go and see if she can help solve some of this problem. This is kind of where Granny and Escarina end up broaching they burst in on a dinner at Unseen University, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
You do not interrupt wizards when they are eating their dinner in Terry Pratchett's Discworld. They live for their dinner. But Granny Weatherwax and Escarina both show up, and they just start marching up to the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University. And they're being told, no, you can't be in here, you need to leave. And nobody's actually trying to stop Granny Weatherwax because they see the look on her face.
Yeah.
When she gets to the Arch-Chancellor, there's this brief discussion that I don't actually remember how much of it mattered, because they almost immediately go into a battle of magic.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because everyone is terrified because they're like, wait, this witch is going head to head with the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University, and it becomes apparent really quickly that they are both very, very, very good at magic, and nobody
Yeah.
knows what to do and if they want to interfere.
They are largely discouraging themselves from interfering.
Yeah, it's clear that these two are very dangerous, and it's also clear that there's more going on than can possibly be handled by anyone outside of this battle. So they're kind of like turning into objects, almost like in that, what was that called? The Sword and the Stone, was that Disney? That wasn't Disney, was it?
Disney was Sword in the Stone, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So when the wizard and the witch were, I don't know if it was supposed to be a nod to that.
It's an
or
old
not.
story. It's an old story of like a wizard and a witch kind of changing shapes to turn into things that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it predates that animated movie, and because it appears in other fairy tales
No,
too.
that movie was. Oh no, I thought you meant the book. Yeah. But yeah, that's essentially what happens. Like he turns into a snake, and so she turns into a basket.
Yeah.
He turns into, oh god, there was one that was really funny. Like it was really unexpected what happened, and I can't remember what it was.
Let me see real quick. Cut Angle vanished. Where he had been standing, a huge snake coiled, poised to strike. Granny vanished. Where she had been standing was a large wicker basket. The snake became a giant reptile from the mists of time. The basket became the snow wind of the ice giants, coating the struggling monster with ice. The reptile became a saber-toothed tiger crouched to spring. The gale became a bubbling tar pit. The tiger managed to become an eagle, swooping. The tar pits became a tufted hood. Then images began to flicker as shape replaced shape. Stroboscope shadows danced around the wall. Yada yada yada. Glossy statues in the midst of the hurtling images.
Now, the tufted hood was the one I liked.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this is one of the strangest magic battles that Granny Weatherwax ever has. One of the things that makes Granny Weatherwax my favorite Discworld character is that outside of this book, every battle she has is so over the top and so impressive. Just I believe the kiddies call it aura farming now. And when Granny Weatherwax steps onto a stage in any of the books after this, and this wasn't even that bad, because up until this point you hadn't actually seen her do any really crazy magic like this.
Right.
You could have thought most of the book that she was an average witch. And then it's just like, oh, nope, she's taking on the head of the university and she might win.
Yeah. Well, there's a point after the battle ends that I think, shoot, let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, that was a good one too, between her and Cut Angle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Granny and Cut Angle, and she says, "That was quite an impressive display. You nearly won once or twice there." And Cut Angle says, "Oh," said Cut Angle, brightening up. "Do you really think so?" Granny nodded.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
They are... I'm pretty sure that Granny Weatherwax's fights in these books were probably... You wouldn't think it. Like there's a lot of action books out there, and books where it's like, oh, there's a fight scene here that was really good.
Yeah.
But the battles that Granny Weatherwax has in all of her books are my favorite fight scenes in any books ever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not really even fight scenes. I mean, there's a battle going on. There's not like a bunch of like ninja swords and action and everything. It's just one person kind of outthinking other people, or just like having a presence that can't be beat.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'd bring some of them up, but I think I think we'll be covering more of these books at some point.
Absolutely, yes.
But yeah, ultimately, Esk and Simon end up in the dungeon dimensions, sort of mentally, I guess, because their bodies are unconscious in the library. Esk goes to rescue Simon. The door is locked. Nobody can get in. Magic isn't working. And so she tries using witch's magic instead of wizard magic to bypass this a little bit. And she manages to get through the door. And then she enters the dungeon dimensions, which are just these empty, cold places filled with cold gray sand.
Yeah.
And
silver sand.
Silver sand, yeah. And she can see all the creatures like hovering about, but they don't really do much.
Well, there's an interesting thing. There's an interesting element there, is that they can be very threatening, but they can't actually take anything from either her or Simon. But what they can do is they can convince you to give up things to them, and that's where their real power comes from. They suggest. Now, Escarina doesn't really have the power to beat them. So what ends up happening is that Granny Weatherwax and Cut Angle go looking for that staff. And of course, because of this storm, the Ankh River has flooded, and so basically they have to go look for that magic staff and bring it back so that they can, conjure up enough magic power to pull them out of the dungeon dimensions, which is kind of the final actions of the book, in the sense that that's their plan. But how they get there, of course, is the interesting part.
Yeah, they pretty much just they take the staff and set it on Escarina, and so the staff appears for her in the dungeon dimensions, and she's able to use it to get back, but not before discovering that not using magic is actually more effective against the dungeon dimension creatures than actually using it.
Yeah.
Which I'm not exactly sure the ramifications of that. Like, the act of not using it when you can apparently hurts them.
Right.
And I like that, but it also makes it funny to think about everything that happens in Discworld after that.
Yeah.
So her and Simon manage to escape. Like Simon is trying to get her to just run away, and she's like, no, we're both getting out of here. He essentially gives her this globe that is a representation of the Discworld that they're trying to break into, and he tells her to run with it. And they both end up running from these creatures, but then she discovers that she can sort of push them back. And the staff is kind of what opens up a bridge for her and Simon to step back and get out of that situation. And they make it back to the real world, and the dungeon dimension creatures kind of lose their way to be able to get back. And this solves pretty much all of the problems. There's not really too much more to the climax than that, other than Esk and Simon discovering this new type of magic of not using magic, which technically Granny Weatherwax had been telling her about from the start of the book.
Right.
Because the book sort of ends with this almost epilogue way of writing where her and Simon go off to discover a new type of magic and teach it at the university. They do make her an official wizard. She is a wizard at Unseen University by the end of the book. One of the more interesting things that happens at the end of the book is directly related to Granny Weatherwax, because Cut Angle asks her if she'd like a position as a member of the being a chair member.
Yeah.
At Unseen University, and at the end of the book, it seems like she accepts it. There's some thinking about like, oh well, like during the summertime they can send students to train with her at her home, and then she would come and work once in a while throughout the year as
give
an
some
instructor,
lectures and stuff. Yeah,
which, to the best of my knowledge, one of two things must have happened, because it's never brought up again, other than the only thing you ever hear about all of this ever again from Granny Weatherwax is when someone's talking about travel, and she says, well, I've been to Ankh-Morpork. And I'm pretty sure that's like the only mention of any of this that you ever get in any of the books following it, with one exception that I'll get to in a minute.
Okay.
But essentially, it seems like Granny Weatherwax accepted the position, so I'm not 100% sure if the true lore of the Discworld is that she worked there for a while and gave it up by the time the book Weird Sisters came about and she was in the coven with the other two witches, or if she ultimately decided not to do it anyway. You never get that story, but that's one of the more interesting things that's
it's
missing.
against the lore.
Yeah, it's against the lore. It's just funny to think of Granny Weatherwax at Unseen University teaching students, though, because she would be the most hated teacher, easily. And yet she'd probably have the best knowledge base out of all of the people teaching.
Oh,
her.
yeah.
So, for as simple-minded and backwater as she is sometimes, she is easily the most in-depth and well-thought-out magic user in all of the books.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she solves problems is always so much more clever than most of the other stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Granny Weatherwax as a member of Unseen University, unofficially, officially, I guess.
Well, my suspicion is that once things calm down, like, probably a bunch of other things happened that were like, well, that's what was said during an emergency, but,
Yeah,
that was
she
an
probably
emergency.
went home and was like, you know what, why would I keep jumping back and forth? I don't even like riding broomsticks. I'm done with this.
Exactly.
That broomstick, by the way, is her broomstick going forward in the next couple books.
Okay.
When she had it in the middle of this book, she got it from that woman in the one town that she knew.
Yeah,
And she ends up keeping that throughout the other stories, but that particular broom, she always had trouble getting it started. So all the other witches kind of just jump on their broomsticks and fly. She's got to get a running start, essentially.
Yeah, they refer to it as bump starting.
Yes, which is one of the jokes at the beginning of Weird Sisters when...
Yeah.
Or maybe it was Witches Abroad, where Magrat is like, I think it's called hump starting, and...
yeah.
It's like, no, it's bump starting. But the broom is kind of a cool relic from this book. Of course, most of the base lore of Granny Weatherwax is from this book, the headology, the desire to solve problems without magic, even though she can.
Mm-hmm.
It all stems from this first novel, and I would say that to fully appreciate all the other books going forward, it's definitely worth reading this one, even though this is one of the weaker Discworld books, easily.
Yeah.
One of the disappointments in all of Discworld is that, or at least so I thought, Escarina is never used again as a character in Discworld. And I spent my whole life thinking that, only to find out recently that the 2 Tiffany Aching books that I never read, one of them has Escarina returning to Lancre to kind of mentor Tiffany Aching.
Oh, okay.
So Granny Weatherwax is teaching her some things, and then I guess she's like, oh, I know someone else who might be able to help you, and Escarina makes a triumphant return. Starting, way back in 1987, I believe that the book in question was published in like 2016 or something.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe a little earlier than that. I don't know. I don't remember how old the Tiffany Aching books are, but it was one of the last books Terry Pratchett read. So he did come around to Escarina one more time after all that time before he died.
Okay.
So that's nice. So I'm looking forward to finally reading that one. The Tiffany Aching books are some of my least favorite Terry Pratchett books because they are written more for a younger audience.
Yeah.
But they do have Granny Weatherwax in them, and so... you're
obligated to read them.
Yeah, I'm obligated to, and she does have her cool Granny Weatherwax moments in a lot of them. The book focuses on Tiffany Aching more, so obviously she's taking the lead. But for my money, Granny Weatherwax in all of the books where her and the other 2 witches were the lead characters, that is peak Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
So, any other thoughts on Equal Rites? Like, I know you said that. Well, how'd you like it overall?
It's good. It didn't blow me away. I think Thief of Time and Reaper Man are like 2 of my favorite. I haven't read a lot of Pratchett, but like those ones have really satisfying, action climaxes. And this one, it's a lot more subdued. This one has... It's funny because I would have expected Terry Pratchett to have gone less in the pun and funny figure of speech direction as time goes on, but he actually went the opposite direction because he's actually kind of straight manning in this one to a certain degree. Like, there's not a lot of like laugh out loud jokes in this book either. Like, there's some funny things that make you chuckle, and there's some clever, constructions of events that are, ironic and funny, and there's some really nice like similes and metaphors that he uses for description. But at the same time, I felt like compared to some of his other books that I've read, that he was kind of just like, let's just write a book and make a fun adventure, as opposed to like really having a lot of his like the things that eventually became distinctive of him for me. You know what I mean? So like, but again, it's his 3rd Discworld book, so he's kind of getting into the swing of things in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was, if not this book, then not too many books after this one was where he really found his full footing. And he had a long stretch of very similar style for his books going forward.
Yeah.
And so if this was the jumping off point that he needed to really get rolling, I mean, it's still a better book than 90%
I mean, there's a lot of really
the-
important things that introduced here, right? Like we get Granny Weatherwax, who is, a force to be reckoned with throughout the rest of the stories for the most part. Like if she appears, she's likely to be in charge in one way or another. We get a lot more. We get a lot more about Unseen University without overdoing it. We get a lot of like geography, I guess you would call it, right? We learn a little bit more about the Ram Tops. We learn a little bit more about some of the people that live outside of Ankh-Morpork and so on and so forth. It's a good like establishing book for a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think that the Witches books tie in a lot of stuff that happens almost as much as the Guards books, which I mean, the Guards books end up covering entire continents at some point, so it's not surprising that most of the characters have some connection to the events that happen in those.
Yeah.
But there's always nice little bits in the Witches books, like in this one where Granny Weatherwax actually recognizes Cut Angle as being from the Ram Tops, near the village that she grew up in.
Well, yeah, there's a whole fun little conversation that they have about this because they might actually have known each other when they were kids, and the way that they figure that out is pretty humorous.
It's actually funny too because
it would be funny if it were humorous. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or it could be a bone. We don't know, but there is actually another wizard that becomes Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University called Ridcully, who was essentially call it sort of a teenage, like, boyfriend-girlfriend thing that briefly happened between them before he went off to become a wizard.
Okay.
He comes back in a story where elves are trying to invade. This is another one of them things like...
Wait, are you talking about Cut Angle or are you talking about Ridcully at this point?
Ridcully. Ridcully
Okay.
shows up in Lords and Ladies, a story where elves are trying to return to the Discworld.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're presented like the auditors of reality.
Ridcully is already the Arch-Chancellor by the time of Reaper Man.
Yeah, Ridcully's a recurring character in a lot of the books. But in that particular book, he comes back for some reason. He's visiting Lancre, is the town that she's living in. And they remember each other. It's like, yeah, you were that one that was always chasing after me. And the joke was that Granny Weatherwax always ran too fast, so eventually he gave up.
I see.
The other thing that happened, there was another incident with a character. Oh, in The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic, the Arch-Chancellor in that book was actually a Weatherwax. And in Lords and Ladies, when Granny Weatherwax is talking to Ridcully about that, she's talking to Ridcully, she mentions that a Weatherwax used to be the Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University.
Yeah.
Which is another lore point that this one was always kind of interesting, because there is a legitimate reason this one changed. So in early Discworld, the way that you moved up in the ranks as a wizard at Unseen University was by offing the competition, essentially. Like, if there was someone above you and you wanted their position, it wasn't unheard of for them to go missing and all that anyone could find is a smoking pair of shoes, and then suddenly you're the new person in their position. It actually all changed when Ridcully became the Arch-Chancellor, because for a while people would try to assassinate him, essentially.
Yeah.
And he would always have some trick or some trap that would make them think otherwise. Like he wouldn't necessarily return in kind. He would just scare them so much that eventually Unseen University went from a pool of backstabbing, assassinating wizards to just a collection of wizards that are trying to do science because nobody could figure out what to do about Ridcully. So it just, all of that vanished. Like, there were no assassinations anymore at some point in the books, and it was all because of Ridcully. So that was one of the major changes that happened over time.
Mm-hmm.
It just, there's just so much that went on in those books over the course of a few decades where he was writing them. It's got a much deeper background to it than even some of the most intrigue-filled fantasy that you might be able to name.
Sure.
Like without a doubt, I don't know how the books are, so I can't say with certainty, but without a doubt, if I'm basing the lore of Song of Fire and Ice off of the television show, which I wasn't a big fan of, but nonetheless, it had stuff in it. The lore in that series ran skin deep compared to what the Discworld is. And it's probably an unfair assessment, given that I'm pretty sure Discworld is much older and had a lot more time to have all of that filled in. But nonetheless, this is kind of the point. It's like there's this
also, it helped that Terry Pratchett would continue working on the books.
Yeah, he did continue writing them. So
yes,
it does
That's
help.
one advantage that Discworld had.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a pretty big universe to dive into. I mean, everyone should though. They're really good books. Even we're talking about this one like, oh, this isn't exactly the best one. This book is so much better than most of what I read when I was getting into science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah.
It's just
it just has such a unique tone to it that it's its own thing entirely. Like there's no other book series that feels like the Discworld series, and so you just need to check it out.
Yeah, not even close. Like Douglas Adams is the same type of writer, but for science fiction. But the tone of it is it's not.
Well, Douglas
Terry
Adams
Pratchett.
is a lot more sarcastic, right?
Yeah.
Douglas Adams is a lot more sarcastic, whereas Terry Pratchett could get sarcastic occasionally, but generally speaking, the spirit of the books is very kind of like positive comedy. You know what I mean? Like it makes fun of things without like having too much of an edge on it. And so, it feels like it's in good fun and you enjoy it. As opposed to people constantly snarking at each other, which there was quite a bit of in Douglas Adams. As much as I love Douglas Adams. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's Douglas Adams. There wasn't really a problem with the snarkiness. It's just, Terry Pratchett.
It's just different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different, and everyone has their preferences. Terry Pratchett's a better read, in my opinion.
I mean, there's more Terry Pratchett, so that helps.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more. I don't even remember how many books there were. Something like 40-ish?
Something like that, yeah.
A good amount of stuff to get into. And there's enough that I forget that there's other ones I haven't read yet, because I thought I read them all for the longest time, except for one Tiffany Aching book. Only to learn that there was one Discworld book that I had missed, and two Tiffany Aching books. Somehow I had never realized the other one existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I need to finish those two, and I'll have completed the entire set. And then, of course, after he died, they released a bunch of short stories. I picked up one of those books, and there's another one that I need to dig up somewhere. I think it's a different one. It might just have a different cover or a different title and have the same stories in it. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to pick up some more of these over time. They're fun reads, and I certainly don't mind owning more Terry Pratchett books. So
I mean, if you haven't read that many of them, like you said, it's high time you did.
Yeah, it's just a question of like being able to find the time and being able to find the cash to buy the books.
Yeah. No, we'll hook you up if we have to. I mean, I will send you some Pratchett if that has to be the case.
Well, we can arrange to do episode on a Pratchett book every other week if we want. We can just work our way through them.
I know you said you read Thief of Time. That was a really good one.
That was probably the first one I ever read. I found an old, because I knew you were a big Pratchett fan, and I think I borrowed The Light Fantastic from you and read that, but like I didn't really remember it that well, and like I read it once, so whatever. But like I was at a bookstore, like a big old used bookstore in Detroit, King Books, I think, was the one. Have you ever been there?
I've never been there, despite the fact that it's like a 25-minute drive. But
yeah, it's a really famous used bookstore. Yeah. Well, I found a hardcover copy of The Thief of Time there, and I said, "Ooh, Terry Pratchett. I haven't read much of this. I like this is like I think this was soon after I read the Light Fantastic that you let me borrow, and I was like, oh, I should read some more Pratchett. And so I was like, oh, well, this is nice, and it's hardcover, and it has a dust jacket, and it's in good shape, and it's like $5. So I'm going to buy this. So that was, my second dose of Pratchett, and I really enjoy that book. It's funny because I think I'm not sure who was first, but there's a character in that book that reminds me very much of another character in a book series by a completely different author, and I can't figure out whether they were influencing each other, and I suspect that they might have been. So that one also has I also like it because of that.
Which book was that in?
Which book was what in?
This character.
In Thief of Time.
Oh, you don't mean Lao Tse, do you?
Yeah, I do.
He was in several of the Terry Pratchett books as like a minor character. He was in Small Gods. That was where he was introduced.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm trying to think of who he would have been influenced by other than the actual Lao Tzu. But I probably haven't read the book you're talking about.
No, probably not. No, there's a character that shows up in some of Raymond Feist books that is very similar, says a lot of similar things to what Lao Tzu says.
Yeah, it could very well be that that's the case. I can make an assumption that, Terry Pratchett is really good at looking at things. Like he probably read, what's it called? The Tao Te Ching or something by Lao Tzu. And,
No, well, it's just called the... No, maybe it is called the Tao something or other. Yeah, that's right.
Whatever it is, Terry Pratchett probably, glimpsed through it and read it and took some of the ideas behind it and made a character out of it. And I wouldn't doubt that maybe both of those characters are saying the same things because they came out of that particular thing. But
I don't know. I think it's likely
Pratchett,
that fantasy authors read each other.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, all of Discworld is based off of Larry Niven's Ringworld.
Right.
What was the book? It was Strata. Strata was the book that Terry Pratchett wrote. I always thought it was his first book, but apparently The Carpet People was his first book.
Mm-hmm.
And The Carpet People, I don't think had anything to do with Discworld. Strata was technically a Discworld book, but only in the sense that it was direct parody of Larry Niven's Ringworld.
Ringworld, yeah.
And he had this group of like a couple of different species of space traveling characters discover this world that's in the shape of a disc, and they go down and visit it, and it is parodying a lot of what happened in Ringworld, but it's also kind of creating this lore of this world that operates on a disc. And
sure,
it actually does make sense if you read it and then read the Terry Pratchett books that it might be the same world that all of this is taking place on based on what they discover there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Strata was also a pretty good book. It's good sci-fi parody for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot more we could definitely say about it, but we should probably save some for another Terry Pratchett day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, maybe let's call this an episode then.
Yeah, maybe we should dig into Strata one day. That's
that'd be fine. We should totally do that.
Yeah, I think you'd find it an interesting read.
Sure. I mean, Pratchett is always interesting to read. It's just a question of, like, is he up at 8 or is he up at 10?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, put it like this. One of the hardest questions in the universe, hardest and easiest question I've ever been presented is, what is essential Terry Pratchett reading? Because the answer is all of it. It really is. There's no other author, like maybe Rex Stout, but like, you wouldn't be able to sit down and read like every Rex Stout book in one go. You'd want to savor some of it. It's a different flavor. You'd want to like read a book here and there just to, get the occasional mystery fulfillment. But with Terry Pratchett, he is the author that you could sit down and start reading his books, and if you had the time and energy for it, you wouldn't want to put him down. You would want to read, like, okay, give me the next one. I want to see another story in this world. Mm-hmm. There's no other author I have ever read where it's just like, I remember in my teens and 20s, it was like, oh, he released another book. I need that. And that did not taper off at all until, close to the end of his life when he was doing the Tiffany Aching books. And it's just like, all right, I've read everything. I'll read these at a slower pace because these are for a younger audience. I'm not quite as interested, but then I'm like, Granny Weatherwax is in them. I do have to read these,
Yeah.
and they are
Yeah.
good stories in their own right. So yeah, you can't go wrong with Terry Pratchett. You might find one that isn't, the absolute best he does once in a while, but the majority of his books are all 100% start to finish solid reads.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of no other author like that.
All right. Well, I guess we'll stop on that note. As always, this is the Wordy Pair podcast. Thanks for watching, or thanks for listening, depending on where you're doing it. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I'm Justin.
And enjoy some Discworld. There will be links in the description and all that good stuff.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.